So in this video, we are going to talk about slope, of straight lines. So slope gives us some information about how lines are what they look like, how they're moving. So one of the things you might think about in terms of slope is when you hear the word slopes is you might think about skiing. So if you think about a skier on a mountain, right? So maybe here's my little skiing guy. He's got ski poles, right? And his skis. And he's going to go down the mountain, right? And they talk about the different, if you've skied before, right? Slopes are rated with, different how easy or hard they are. And that depends on how much, how fast this guy's going to go down the hill, right? Like, is it a really big incline? Is it not? Is it a less incline? And so that's kind of in terms of lines. We want to explain what the incline of the line looks like. So I'm going to draw a couple lines here. I'm going to first draw, put a couple other X and Y axes here. Okay, and then I'm going to draw my line in a different color so it's a little easier to see. So if you think about drawing a line in the plane, our line could maybe look like this. Our line could maybe look like this. I could also have a line that was completely horizontal or a line that's completely vertical. And so each of these lines, we can classify them based on their slope. So this first line here, we'll call it number 1 over here. This line, it's going as you move from left to right. So when we're talking about slopes of lines, we're always looking at the line starting on the left side and going to the right side. So as we move from left to right, this line goes uphill, right? So if you think about if you were somebody walking on this line, right? If you were a person who started walking down here, this would be an uphill way to walk. And so lines that go in this direction, that from left to right go uphill, those lines have positive slope. On the other side, if you look at the line here, number 2, as I go from left to right, okay, if I was walking on this line, again, I started over here on the left part, I would be walking downhill. So as I go from left to right on this line, I go downhill. Whoops. This goes downhill. And that means it has negative slope. So uphill from left to right is positive slope. Downhill from left to right is negative slope. The other two things that could happen is in number 3, you could have a horizontal line. And when you have a horizontal line, it is staying constant. It's staying the same the entire way. This would be like walking on a flat road. And when that happens, what we're saying is that basically the slope is not changing at all. And so the slope here is actually 0 because nothing is happening. So the slope is 0. We often think of slope as rise over run. So I'll kind of put that here. So slope we think of as rise over the run. And the rise, we're talking about the the y direction. So we're talking about the y's. And the run, we're talking about the x's. So another way to think about this is that the y value here doesn't change at all. Even though the x value changes a bunch, the y value doesn't. And so that's why the slope is 0. Vertical lines, like I have over here, we'll call this number 4. So number 4 is vertical line. So in a vertical line, I have all So the Y's are changing, right? So the rise part is changing, but the run part, it doesn't move anywhere from left to right. It only moves from top to bottom. So in that case, if you were thinking about it, since the run is 0, it's like we're dividing by 0, and you can't divide by 0. So for vertical lines, the slope is undefined. So that's kind of how we classify different slopes. I do have a little picture in case you have trouble remembering some of this. So you can always draw yourself this little face here. Right? And so my face is going to have a plus sign on that side, a minus sign on that side. Here's its little nose, and here's its mouth. So it's not the happiest looking face in the world. But if you notice, if you remember this face, lines that go like this have positive slope. Lines that go downhill have negative slope. The nose is actually a straight up and down line and a U to remind you that straight up and down lines have undefined slope. And the mouth is a horizontal line with these two little zeros to remind you that horizontal lines have 0 slope.